Hello. This time we're going to discuss the SQL alter table command. This command allows us to change the structure of the data tables after they've been created. So as we've seen, SQL is strict and well defined through its table structure. The table structure defines the data types of the columns and the constraints on the data stored there. There are column level constraints, such as string length, not null, default values. Essentially anything on a column past the name of the column and the data type can be considered a constraint on the data. There are column constraints, and then there are row constraints, such as the primary key or a unique key. So if a row is being inserted and it violates the primary key constraint, the entire row would be rejected. It's a rule about the data. There are also cross-table constraints, such as the foreign key. Once a foreign key has been established between two rows, a child row and the parent row, that relationship remains intact, and the database enforces that, so that the parent table can't be modified. A parent table row can't be modified in such a way as to break the relationship between a dependent child table row. On occasion, this strict table structure needs to be modified. For example, a mistake was made in the table design. The primary key isn't so unique in the actual data. You need to modify it in a way that makes it unique. You're adding a new feature to the application. This may call for new columns and new rules about those columns. So modifying tables with existing data, that's the real problem. If the table is empty, it's simple to use the alter table command. If the table contains data, but you're not adding constraints, it's also simple. You're not adding new rules that constrain the data. However, if the table contains data and you're adding constraints, then it's not so simple. The new constraint cannot be added if existing data violates the proposed constraints. Again, reviewing the types of constraints. If a column constraint allows null, and now you want to say this column is going to not allow nulls anymore and apply not null, if there's a null value in the actual data that's stored in that table, then the new proposed constraint will not be added by the database. The alter table command will be rejected. If there's a row constraint, primary key, and you're modifying the primary key, and there's existing data that's not unique according to the primary key, then that alter table would also be rejected. Similarly, the foreign key would be rejected if a foreign key relationship cannot be established between a child row, and a parent row in the existing data. So a simple task becomes complicated. You need to modify the existing data to fit the new constraint. You may also need to modify the application code that works with the database. Remember, the database is the kernel of your application, and it radiates outward from there. So you may have server data or server code and client code that needs to be modified in the case that you need to modify your database table. So we're going to take a look at the MySQL alter table command. There are several older commands to modify table structure, but these custom commands tend to affect one table characteristic. The alter command, on the other hand, is a Swiss Army knife command. You can't memorize it all, but you remember that it exists, and of course you remember the things that you use a lot. We'll take a look at several examples of the alter table command in order to give you a flavor of how it works.